Stake isn't risky, it's rigged and everyone knows it. Because the game was never about winning, but to feed the illusion of fairness. In just a few years, Stake grew from an obscure underground startup into one of the world's largest and most talked about gambling empires. Its logo has adorned Premier League football jerseys and Formula One cars, and its platform has attracted celebrity endorsements from the likes of Drake. Yet behind the meteoric rise lies a tangle of controversies and regulatory gray areas that have made Stake perhaps the most controversial betting platform of the digital age. In this documentary-style account, we journey through the history of Stake, from its humble origins in the nascent days of Bitcoin gambling to its emergence as a global powerhouse in online betting. We will trace major events and business developments that define Stake's rise and shine a light on the darker side of its success. Allegations of targeting underage gamblers, ethical concerns about addiction, clashes with regulators, lawsuits, exposés, and even cyber heists. This is a story of how two young entrepreneurs combined cryptocurrency and casino gaming to disrupt an entire industry. It's a story of innovation and opportunism, of bold marketing and boundary-pushing practices. Buckle up as we delve inside the rise of the world's most controversial betting empire. The origins of Stake can be traced back to an unlikely place, an online video game. In the early 2010s, Edward Craven from Australia and Bijan Tehrani from the United States were just teenagers who met through the game RuneScape. The two bonded over a shared fascination with both gaming and gambling. In RuneScape's competitive community, they devised a scheme called staking, which allowed players to wager in-game gold on player versus player duels. The scheme proved immensely popular and profitable among their fellow gamers until game moderators shut it down for violating the rules. It was an early lesson in both the allure and the peril of unregulated betting. As Ed Craven later reflected with a sly smile, they had been pushing boundaries even then. In 2013, riding the wave of Bitcoin's emergence, Craven and Tehrani saw a new opportunity. Bitcoin was trading at only around $100 at the time, but its promise of a decentralized, borderless currency sparked an idea. What if they could create a cryptocurrency-based gambling game? That year, along with a few friends, they launched Primetis, one of the world's first online Bitcoin gambling experiences. Primetis was a simple yet addictive dice game where players could wager Bitcoins on a roll of a virtual die. The concept was straightforward. Guess a number and win or lose Bitcoins based on the roll. But it tapped into a huge unmet demand. Crypto enthusiasts, many of them early Bitcoin adopters, flocked to Primetis for its novelty and the thrill of potentially multiplying their digital fortunes. With virtually no traditional casinos accepting Bitcoin in those days, Primetis stood out as a pioneer. It quickly generated enough profits to become a full-time venture for its teenage creators. By the mid-2010s, Primetis had a dedicated user base and had made Craven and Tehrani modestly wealthy while still in their early 20s. Buoyed by this success, the founders hungered for something bigger than a single dice game. In 2016, Ed Craven and Bijan Tehrani formally established a company called EasyGo in Melbourne, Australia. EasyGo was conceived as a tech startup focusing on developing online casino games and platforms. They hired a small team, around 18 employees at the outset, and set up an office in a nondescript building, giving little indication that it would soon be the nerve center of a global gambling operation. Drawing on their Primetis earnings and experience, they began building a more ambitious platform, one that could offer a full suite of casino games and sports betting, entirely powered by cryptocurrency. In 2017, that vision materialized with the official launch of Stake. The name Stake was fitting on multiple levels, a nod to the gambling term for a wager, and perhaps a wink to their RuneScape staking days. Stake went live as an online casino where every bet was placed in crypto. The timing was impeccable. Cryptocurrency was on the cusp of mainstream attention. By late 2017, Bitcoin's value had surged to nearly $10,000, minting new crypto millionaires and drawing headlines worldwide. Stake positioned itself as the go-to destination for this new class of wealth to play with. Unlike traditional online casinos that required bank accounts and identity verification, Stake allowed players to join from anywhere in the world almost instantly using just a crypto wallet. The platform initially focused on provably fair in-house games, an approach inherited from Primetis's model, where cryptographic algorithms allow users to verify game fairness. Soon, Stake expanded its offerings to include slot machines, roulette, blackjack, poker, and a sports book for betting on major sports, all denominated in Bitcoin and other emerging cryptocurrencies. From the outset, Stake's operations straddled a legal gray zone. The company incorporated and based its gambling servers in Curaçao, a Caribbean jurisdiction known for its lenient online gambling regulations. A Curaçao e-gaming license was relatively easy and inexpensive to obtain, especially compared to the stringent and costly licenses in countries like the UK or the US. This license, essentially a rubber stamp from an offshore haven, allowed Stake to brand itself as a licensed casino, even though Curaçao's oversight was minimal. In practice, this meant Stake could operate with very little regulatory scrutiny. There were no robust requirements for verifying players' ages or source of funds, no strict responsible gambling mandates, and negligible taxation. The founders had essentially discovered a legal backdoor. By basing their business in a tiny offshore jurisdiction and using a virtual currency outside traditional banking, they could offer online gambling to almost anyone, anywhere, even in places where it was technically illegal. For Ed and Bijan, two ambitious 20-somethings, it was a calculated risk. The potential rewards were enormous, and at the time, few laws around the world even contemplated cryptocurrency gambling. As Ed Craven later remarked, they had taken two of the most controversial technologies and industries and combined them. The uphill battle to gain legitimacy was just beginning, but first they would have to grow, and grow quickly, in this regulatory void. In its early years, 2017 to 2019, Stake grew quietly but steadily, leveraging a set of advantages that traditional gambling operators simply couldn't match. The first key advantage was borderless accessibility. Because bets on Stake were made in cryptocurrencies and the platform was hosted offshore, users from all over the globe could join with ease. A gambler from Europe, Asia, or Latin America could simply log on to Stake, deposit some Bitcoin or Ethereum, and start playing. No banks, no credit card companies, and no national regulators acting as gatekeepers. This was radically different from the conventional online casinos that typically had to block players from countries where they weren't licensed. Stake, by contrast, operated in a kind of legal limbo. Unless a country actively took steps to block the website or explicitly outlawed crypto gambling, Stake's virtual doors remained open. For tech-savvy gamblers, especially those in countries with strict gambling laws, this was a revelation. A casino that you could carry in your pocket, uncensored and accessible 24/7. Another advantage was the relative anonymity and privacy offered by the platform. In those early days, Stake allowed people to register with just an email or even a username, without immediately having to submit passports or personal documents. Traditional online betting sites often enforce Know Your Customer, KYC checks as soon as you deposit money to verify identity and age. Stake flipped that script. It largely deferred KYC verification unless suspicious activity was observed or until a user tried to withdraw very large sums. This don't ask, don't tell approach meant that many users, possibly including those underage or using the site from restricted regions, could gamble for long stretches without ever providing identification. From the perspective of someone wanting to keep their gambling habit under wraps, whether from family, banks, or authorities, this was extremely appealing. A player could transfer a few $100s worth of Bitcoin into Stake, play online slots or blackjack for hours, and if they lost it all, no one would be the wiser. There'd be no credit card bills or bank statements revealing the transactions. If they won big and wanted to cash out life-changing money, only then would the verification question start. This policy dramatically lowered the friction for new users to start gambling, fueling Stake's early growth. However, it also planted the seeds for later controversy, as critics argued that such lax controls made it easy for minors and self-excluded problem gamblers to sneak in. By 2019, these factors, borderless reach, anonymity, fast payments, and good odds, had turned Stake into a thriving underground casino. Without any traditional advertising, the platform's reputation spread in online gambling forums, cryptocurrency communities, and word of mouth among bettors. It also didn't hurt that the broader crypto market was booming at times, giving people more disposable crypto wealth to gamble with. The user base of Stake expanded to include a cosmopolitan mix: tech-savvy poker players from Canada, slot enthusiasts from Japan, sports bettors from Brazil, and many more. However, this early success was largely under the radar. To the mainstream public, the name Stake meant little in 2019. That was all about to change. The founders recognized that to truly scale into a global powerhouse, they needed to bring their brand out of the shadows and into the spotlight. The next chapter of Stake's story would be defined by an aggressive push into marketing and partnerships, moves that would make Stake a household name, for better or worse. Entering the 2020s, Stake embarked on an unprecedented marketing blitz that catapulted it from niche crypto circles to mainstream awareness. At the heart of this strategy was the realization that online entertainment and gambling were converging, and the best way to gain new users was to meet them where they already spent time: social media and streaming platforms. If the 2017 to 2019 period had proven the viability of Stake's crypto casino model, the next phase was about growth and visibility. Ed Craven and Bijan Tehrani had an instinct for marketing and a willingness to spend lavishly to promote their brand. They knew that traditional advertising avenues, like TV or print, were largely closed off to gambling companies in many countries due to legal restrictions. So they got creative and turned to the Wild West of advertising, sponsoring online content creators and celebrities who could bring in a new generation of gamblers. One of Stake's boldest moves was to tap into the emerging trend of live-streamed gambling. Websites like Twitch, a platform primarily known for video game streaming, had by 2020 developed a subculture of streamers who broadcast themselves playing online casino games, spinning virtual slot machines or betting on digital roulette, while thousands of viewers watched in real time. This was a controversial scene, as it often blurred the line between entertainment and gambling promotion. Stake saw a golden opportunity here. The company began partnering with prominent streamers who were willing to gamble on stream using Stake. The arrangement was usually very enticing for the streamer. Stake would provide huge sums of money, often in Bitcoin, as a bankroll, and the streamer could play with these funds live on air. In return, the streamers promoted Stake, often with referral links or bonus codes for viewers who wanted to try the site themselves. Some of these deals were rumored to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a month per streamer. In fact, insiders later revealed that certain top gambling streamers were paid as much as $1 million per month by Stake to exclusively showcase its casino games. A few names stood out in this new marketing frontier. Tyler "TrainwrecksTV" Nicknam became one of Stake's most visible ambassadors on Twitch. Night after night, TrainwrecksTV would stream marathon gambling sessions funded by Stake, at times wagering absurd amounts. Bets of $100,000 or more in a single spin were not uncommon, while narrating his emotional highs and lows to an audience of tens of thousands. Another massive star, Felix XQC Lengyel, a former professional gamer turned variety streamer, also hopped on the crypto gambling trend and at various points was associated with promoting Stake, though XQC had an on and off relationship with gambling content. These streamers turned gambling into a spectator sport. Viewers, many of them young adults, were drawn in by the thrill of seeing someone risk so much in real time. It was unscripted, it was flashy, and for Stake, it was incredibly effective advertising. Every big win that lit up a streamer's face in excitement, every gut-wrenching loss that left them in disbelief, it all served to make Stake look like the center stage of high-octane entertainment. During the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns in 2020 and 2021, Twitch's overall viewership more than doubled as people stuck at home consumed more online content, and this served as rocket fuel for Stake's growth. As Ed Craven later noted, the timing of the Twitch boom put rocket boosters on the operation. Stake was suddenly being mentioned all over social media, and curious viewers by the thousands were clicking the links to try their luck on the site. The biggest coup in Stake's influencer marketing came in 2022, when the company managed to secure a partnership with one of the world's most famous entertainers, Aubrey Drake Graham. The Canadian rap superstar, known simply as Drake, had publicly dabbled in high-stakes betting and was exactly the kind of figure who could bring stake into the pop culture mainstream. In a landmark deal reportedly worth up to $100 million per year, Drake became a brand ambassador for Stake. The partnership saw Drake hosting live streaming events titled Stake x Drake, where he would play on Stake's online casino and sportsbook, wagering eye-popping amounts of Bitcoin. During these sessions, which were streamed on platforms like Twitch or YouTube, Drake's fans could watch him gamble on everything from NBA basketball games to roulette wheels. In some events, Drake personally gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin to lucky viewers, further blurring the line between promotion, entertainment, and real gambling. The sheer star power of Drake gave Stake a level of legitimacy and exposure it had never had before. Suddenly, Stake wasn't just a brand for online gambling enthusiasts. It was being mentioned in entertainment news. Millions who had never heard of crypto casinos learned the name because Drake bets on Stake became a trending topic. Drake's massive social media presence meant that every time he flaunted a big win, and he had a few, including a publicized moment where he won the equivalent of tens of millions of dollars on a roulette spin, it was essentially an advertisement for Stake to his more than 100 million Instagram followers. While the influencer and celebrity strategy brought Stake to the forefront, the company also splashed its growing profits on traditional sports sponsorships, a classic route for gambling firms seeking brand visibility. In 2021 and 2022, Stake began signing deals across the sports world, but with a twist. Many of these deals were in regions where crypto betting was taking off, or where Stake saw a strategic advantage. For example, Stake became an official betting partner of the UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, in certain regions like Latin America and Asia. UFC events started featuring the Stake logo on the mat and in arena signage, and even MMA stars such as Israel Adesanya, a UFC champion, signed on as Stake brand ambassadors. Combat sports fans worldwide saw Stake's name associated with championship bouts and starfighters, reinforcing the notion that Stake was a major player in the betting industry. The foray into mainstream sports went even further. In mid-2022, Stake made headlines by becoming the primary jersey sponsor of Everton FC, a well-known football club in England's Premier League. The deal, reportedly around £10 million a year, meant the Stake logo appeared on the front of Everton's iconic royal blue jerseys, worn in one of the world's most watched football leagues. This was a bold move. The UK had, and still has, very strict laws about online gambling, particularly unregulated crypto casinos like Stake. To facilitate this sponsorship, Stake took steps to present a compliant face in Britain. It partnered with a locally licensed entity to launch a special UK version of its site, stake.co.uk, that used traditional currency and followed UK gambling commission rules. The UK site was separate from the main crypto-based Stake, an arrangement designed so that Stake could technically say it was a regulated UK operator while enjoying the global exposure of Premier League sponsorship. The Everton sponsorship immediately drew attention and criticism. It was the first time a crypto casino had appeared on a Premier League kit, raising eyebrows among both gambling regulators and football fans. Nonetheless, from a branding perspective, it was a triumph for Stake. Suddenly, millions of football viewers saw Stake emblazoned on TV broadcasts every weekend, often without even knowing what the company did. In the same period, Stake also sponsored other sports teams and events. In motorsports, the Alfa Romeo Formula One team inked a partnership with Stake. In fact, by the 2023 season, the team was officially named Stake Sauber One Team as part of a reported $100 million multi-year deal for naming rights. Stake's logo, or its sister brands, popped up in boxing matches, on the shirts of soccer teams in other countries, and even in the esports realm. It became clear that Stake's marketing philosophy was to spend whatever it took to grab attention. As co-founder Bijan Tirani admitted, many of these sponsorships were not ROI-based at all, meaning they didn't expect a direct profit return from, say, an F1 sponsorship. Rather, the goal was to entrench Stake as a globally recognized name, to signal that this once underground crypto casino was now rubbing shoulders with legacy industries and big-name stars. This strategy of aggressive promotion paid off in sheer growth. By the end of 2022, Stake's user base had swelled massively and its revenues skyrocketed. Financial analysts estimated that Stake had generated nearly $2.6 billion in gross gaming revenue in 2022 alone, a stunning leap from roughly $105 million just 2 years prior. In fact, according to data cited by the Financial Times, this made Stake the 7th largest gambling company in the world by revenue, placing it ahead of some well-known traditional betting companies that had been around for decades. DraftKings, a huge US sports betting firm, was lagging behind Stake's revenue numbers. An almost unbelievable fact, considering Stake had no footing in the US or other large regulated markets. It underscored how effectively Stake tapped into a global audience through crypto and clever marketing. Even as the money poured in and the brand's profile soared, the founders Craven and Tirani maintained relatively low personal profiles. Ed Craven especially preferred to stay out of the limelight, at least in public. But evidence of Stake's success was hard to hide. In Melbourne, the young Australian's newfound fortune made news when it was revealed he had purchased not one, but 2 luxury mansions in the city's most affluent suburb, Toorak, for a combined sum of over 70 million Australian dollars. Likewise, Bijan Tirani bought a $40+ million mansion in Bel Air, Los Angeles, and even a historic Manhattan townhouse previously owned by the Rockefeller family for nearly $50 million. These extravagant purchases, splashed in the press, were funded by the proceeds of a company that, until recently, few outside of internet gambling circles knew about. Stake's rise was making its founders into billionaires in their late 20s. By 2023, both Ed and Bijan each were estimated to be worth around $1.3 billion US, making them some of the world's youngest self-made billionaires. The stage was set for Stake to enjoy the fruits of its meteoric ascent. But even as the company celebrated partnerships and profits, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. The very tactics that spurred Stake's growth, operating in the gray area of laws, promoting gambling as entertainment to massive online audiences, and pushing the envelope of regulation, began to attract intense scrutiny. The latter part of Stake's story would not be as carefree and celebratory as the first. The controversies and challenges were about to erupt. By the time Stake had become a global name in 2022, it was already attracting significant controversy and criticism from multiple quarters. What had been whispers in earlier years, concerns about underage gambling, problem addiction, and regulatory evasion, grew into loud public debates as Stake's visibility increased. The company's operational model, which had been an asset in its rise, now appeared to many as a glaring liability in terms of ethics and legality. In this chapter, we outline the major controversies and challenges that Stake faced as it straddled the line between innovation and illegality. Allegations of underage gambling. One of the most troubling issues that surfaced was the ease with which underage users could potentially access Stake. Traditional casinos and licensed betting sites are required to verify age, usually 18 or 21, depending on jurisdiction, at registration and certainly before any gambling takes place. Stake's lax initial verification meant that, in practice, a tech-savvy teenager could register an account and deposit cryptocurrency without immediately proving their age. As Stake gained popularity, stories began to emerge of minors who got hooked on the platform. In one stark case that came to light, a mother in the UK discovered her 17-year-old son had lost over 7,000 pounds of family savings on Stake, accumulated through secret crypto bets made while he was supposed to be studying. The boy became so distraught by his losses that he contemplated suicide, a harrowing situation that only came to the parents' attention belatedly. When confronted, Stake's customer service reportedly pointed out that the youth had lied about his age when signing up and that no refund was possible, a stance technically defensible under their terms, but deeply upsetting to the family involved. This case and others like it fueled a perception that Stake purposely avoided KYC checks until it was time to withdraw large winnings, thereby turning a blind eye to underage play until it was forced to notice. Journalists decided to investigate these claims. In September 2022, An Observer Guardian investigation in the UK dramatically demonstrated how porous stake safeguards were. Reporters based in London attempted to access stake, even though crypto casinos are not authorized in Great Britain. They used a simple VPN, virtual private network, to disguise their location and successfully visited the stake website within seconds, sidestepping the geo-block that should have kept UK users out. The site eventually did prompt for an ID to verify age, but the reporters decided to test the rigor of this check. Instead of uploading a passport or driver's license, they submitted a photograph of a box of Strepsils throat lozenges as the ID document. Astonishingly, the system initially approved this ludicrous submission, allowing them to proceed to deposit funds. The reporters then bought some cryptocurrency through Stake's integrated purchase options, loaded up their account, and gambled on slot games, all while sitting in a country where what they were doing was ostensibly illegal. For over 2 days, nothing impeded their betting. They even withdrew some remaining funds back to a bank account, effectively using Stake as a currency exchange in the process. Only after 48 hours did Stake's compliance team finally catch the issue and suspend the account, having realized a cough drop box is not valid ID. If this were a real underage user, rather than journalists making a point, they would have had 2 full days to potentially lose money, or even longer had the fake ID been slightly more convincing. This expose was damning. It demonstrated that Stake's stringent compliance processes were in reality very lax, and that the platform's claim of preventing UK usage was easily circumvented. Most alarmingly, it implied that any teen with a VPN and a bit of nerve could fool the system, at least temporarily. Stake, for its part, insisted publicly that it did not target underage players and that it complied with all laws in the jurisdictions where it operated. It pointed to its terms of service, which clearly forbade anyone under 18 or under legal age in their locale from playing. But critics argued that such terms meant little without robust enforcement. They accused Stake of profiting from the "don't verify until cash out" approach, effectively allowing potentially illicit play to continue, so long as the house was mostly collecting losses. Gambling addiction counselors and child safety advocates also raised red flags about the way Stake was marketed. The platform's visuals, colorful graphics, video game-like interfaces, and the integration with youth-centric streaming culture could be particularly alluring to underage individuals. The involvement of celebrities popular with younger demographics, like certain Twitch streamers or even Drake, who has many teenage fans, was also questioned. Was Stake inadvertently or deliberately grooming the next generation of gamblers under the guise of cool entertainment? These debates put Stake squarely in the hot seat of public discourse about gambling harms in the digital age. Alongside the underage issue, Stake became a case study in broader conversations about gambling addiction, especially in the context of cryptocurrency. By 2022, mental health professionals in multiple countries were reporting a rise in clients seeking help for gambling problems involving crypto casinos. What made crypto gambling particularly insidious, some experts noted, was the layer of abstraction. When betting with Bitcoin or Ethereum, players might detach from the reality that this is real money, since it feels like you're playing with digital tokens, not cash. Additionally, crypto platforms operate 24/7 globally, and players can deposit money instantly from their phones, removing many of the friction points that might otherwise cause someone to pause, such as needing to drive to a casino or even wait for a bank transfer. Stake epitomized these concerns. Users could, in the throes of a gambling binge, rapidly convert more funds into crypto and keep betting within minutes. The volatility of cryptocurrency also meant some gamblers chased losses in a doubly risky way, not only betting on games, but also hoping their remaining crypto would increase in value to cover prior losses, a phenomenon akin to both trading and gambling addiction feeding into each other. Ethicists and industry critics often pointed to Stake's high-profile marketing as contributing to a dangerous glamorization of gambling. The flashy displays of wealth, like Drake celebrating multi-million-dollar wins on stream, presented a skewed reality. Viewers rarely saw the equally large or larger losses that might occur off-camera. There were anecdotes of regular players who signed up due to these promotions and then spiraled into problem gambling. In one publicized incident on social media, a young man admitted he lost most of his life savings after being inspired by a Twitch streamer's apparent success on stake. He felt the streams gave an illusion that huge payouts were around every corner, whereas the odds were, of course, firmly in the house's favor. In late 2022, as a reflection of the growing unease, major streaming personalities not involved with stake, such as Pokimani, Imanianis, and others, campaigned for a clampdown on gambling streams, citing the potential for addiction and youth exposure. The pressure reached a boiling point on the platform level. By September 2022, Twitch, under fire from parts of its community and likely wary of legal implications, announced a significant policy change. It would ban the streaming of certain crypto gambling sites that were not licensed in the US or other jurisdictions with strong consumer protections. Stake was explicitly named among the targets of this ban. This move was a direct hit to Stake's marketing pipeline. Overnight, a major avenue for new user acquisition and brand promotion was largely cut off. Top streamers like Trainwrecks TV lamented the decision, since it affected their lucrative deals. But Twitch was resolute. By October 2022, Stake streams on Twitch were no more. The era of openly showcasing Stake slots and roulette to tens of thousands of Twitch viewers had ended. However, Stake's founders were not going to give up that easily. In a countermove, Ed Craven and Bijan Tirani decided to create their own streaming platform that would welcome gambling content. Thus, Kick.com was born in late 2022. Funded by Stake, though at first this wasn't loudly advertised, Kick was positioned as a direct competitor to Twitch, promising a creator-friendly environment with far looser rules, especially regarding gambling. The strategy mirrored Stake's initial approach to gambling: offer looser restrictions and maximum benefits to attract users. Kick enticed streamers by offering unprecedented revenue splits. Streamers could keep 95% of their subscription and ad revenue, compared to the typical 50% on Twitch. And by signing on big names with huge contracts, several prominent creators, including some not even primarily known for gambling, were offered multi-million-dollar deals to stream on Kick. In mid-2023, for instance, news broke that XQC, one of the largest streamers in the world, had signed a non-exclusive contract with Kick, reportedly worth around $100 million over 2 years. A staggering sum that underscored how serious Stake Kick was about building an audience. Essentially, Stake was taking a chunk of its gambling profits and pouring it into building an alternative content ecosystem where its casino could continue to be promoted without interference. Stake's empire now included not just a casino, but a media platform to promote that casino, a level of vertical integration that unsettled regulators and media commentators who feared it could exacerbate gambling promotion to vulnerable groups. As if ethical and regulatory controversies weren't enough, Stake also faced direct attacks in the digital realm. On September 4th, 2023, Stake fell victim to a major hacking incident that rattled the company and its users. In what was essentially an online casino heist, hackers managed to drain over $41 million worth of cryptocurrency from Stake's operational wallets. This was not a case of user accounts being phished. Rather, the attackers exploited a vulnerability in Stake's infrastructure. Later analysis suggested it might have been a compromised private key or insider leak. The stolen funds were primarily in Ethereum and other crypto tokens, taken from what appears to have been Stake's hot wallet, the portion of funds kept online for quick transactions. For a brief period, Stake had to halt withdrawals and deposits to assess the damage, prompting panic among some users. The amount, though large, was something Stake could absorb given its cash flow, and indeed the platform resumed service shortly after, assuring customers that their balances were safe and that it was the company's own reserves that took the hit. The story took an even more intriguing turn when, a couple of weeks later, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, publicly identified the culprits, the Lazarus Group, a notorious state-sponsored hacking organization linked to North Korea. According to the FBI, this North Korean cyber outfit had orchestrated the Stake theft, likely with the aim of funneling the crypto into North Korea's sanctioned government coffers. The regime has been known to use stolen crypto to fund its programs. This revelation underscored a wider point. Crypto casinos had become targets for international hackers and even rogue states. The incident highlighted the risks users take when dealing with unregulated crypto platforms. If a hack occurs, there's no government insurance or easy legal recourse. Stake was fortunate to be financially robust enough to cover losses, but it was a wake-up call about security. After the hack, Stake undoubtedly invested further in beefing up its cybersecurity and monitoring, but the event remains one of the largest casino thefts of the digital age. It was a dramatic reminder that in the world of online gambling, threats don't just come from problem betting or regulators, but also from the dark corners of cyberspace. Another controversy that emerged was a legal battle from within Stake's own origin story. In August 2022, a former associate named Christopher Freeman filed a lawsuit in the US, claiming that Stake's founders had cheated him out of a rightful share of the business. Freeman was no random person. He had been a childhood friend of Bijan Tirani and a co-creator with Tirani and Craven on the Prime Dees venture back in 2013. In his lawsuit, Freeman alleged that he originally held a significant stake in Prometheus, around 20%, and that by 2016, he had proposed expanding it into a full-scale crypto casino. According to him, Tirani and Craven initially dismissed the idea and then secretly went ahead to launch Stake on their own, cutting him out. Freeman claimed that when Stake was starting, they intentionally misled him about the new project, telling him it would be a fiat-only, Australia-specific site, so as to discourage his involvement, and implying it was nothing like the crypto casino idea he'd pitched. By the time he realized Stake was essentially the vision he had shared, the train had left the station. He also accused them of maneuvering to reduce his share in Prometheus and eventually block his access to that business as well. In colorful terms, the complaint painted Freeman as a kind of Eduardo Saverin figure, a nod to the Facebook co-founder who was famously ousted, a parallel the judge would later also mention, likening the story to the Social Network film. Freeman's suit demanded a hefty sum, $400 million in damages, later often quoted as $580 million, possibly including punitive damages. The case became public at an awkward time for Stake, just as it was reveling in its success. Stake's representatives vehemently denied Freeman's allegations, calling them internally inconsistent, intentionally misleading, and provably false. In June 2023, a U.S. federal judge in New York dismissed the case on jurisdictional grounds, not on its merits. The judge found that the U.S. court lacked proper jurisdiction since Stake's operations and parties were largely overseas, and importantly, there wasn't complete diversity since one of the Stake entities or persons might have U.S. ties too. Freeman was given an option to refile in Australia or try to amend the complaint, but as of the time of writing, the lawsuit's status in the U.S. remained dismissed. Still, the airing of this dispute provided a glimpse into power struggles behind the scenes at Stake's founding. It suggested that not everyone who was present at the creation ended up sharing in the immense wealth that followed. A common enough tale in startup land, but one draped here in allegations of deception among former friends. For Stake's public image, it was yet another dent, raising the question of whether the empire was built not only on regulatory arbitrage, but possibly also on sharp-elbowed business tactics. By late 2023, Stake was weathering these storms and still operating, but the cumulative pressure was mounting. The controversies had drawn the focus of regulators and lawmakers in multiple countries. A company that had started by flying under the radar was now squarely on the radar of authorities. The time had come for reckonings in some key jurisdictions, most notably in the very market Stake had triumphantly entered with sponsorships, the United Kingdom and Australia. As Stake's profile rose, governments and regulators around the world began grappling with how to handle this disruptive new player in the gambling industry. Operating in a legal gray zone could only last so long at scale. By 2022 and 2023, several countries took action, or at least inched toward it, specifically in response to Stake's activities. This chapter details how Stake navigated or collided with regulatory regimes in key markets, and how those showdowns reshaped the company's operations. United Kingdom, entry and exit. The UK, with its rich culture of gambling but stringent regulations, is a bellwether market for any betting company. Stake's push into the UK began somewhat optimistically. As mentioned, in late 2021, Stake expanded into Great Britain through a partnership with TGP Europe, a white-label gambling operator that held UK gambling commission licenses. This move allowed Stake to launch a site, stake.uk, that complied with British rules, using pound sterling fiat money instead of crypto, conducting full KYC on players, and implementing the UK's responsible gambling tools like deposit limits and self-exclusion options. It was a way for Stake to say, "We are following the rules here," even as the main Stake site continued to serve UK customers via the backdoor VPNs. The immediate motive for this expansion was likely to legitimize the high-profile sports sponsorships, Everton FC in the Premier League, as well as deals with other UK-based entities like boxing events. If questioned, Stake could point to its licensed status in the UK and a locally compliant site. However, UK authorities weren't entirely appeased. By mid-2022, the UK Gambling Commission and advertising watchdogs had Stake on their radar, especially after investigative reports like The Observer's showed that Brits were still accessing the offshore crypto casino. In Britain, offering gambling services without a proper license is a criminal offense under the Gambling Act. Stake's argument could be that they weren't offering it, since stake.uk was licensed and Stake was technically off limits. But the ease of access undermined that defense. In effect, the UK regulators saw Stake as trying to have it both ways, enjoying sponsorship visibility and likely profiting from UK customers under the table, while maintaining a veneer of compliance. Things came to a head in early 2025 due to an incident that, on the surface, was about advertising standards, but in practice became the final straw for Stake's UK presence. A social media video emerged featuring Bonnie Blue, an adult content creator known for her OnlyFans activity, that was deeply problematic. In this viral clip, Bonnie Blue was seen on or near a college campus, propositioning 18-year-old students for an explicit video project, a scenario already designed to shock. What made it relevant to Stake was that in this video, the Stake logo was prominently superimposed as an advertisement. It appeared as though Stake was sponsoring or endorsing content that had a strong sexual nature and, critically, that seemed to flirt with youth themes. After all, the premise involved 18-year-olds in a school setting, which is far too close to marketing near minors for regulators' comfort. When the clip came to light, it ignited outrage. A UK activist group called the Coalition to End Gambling Ads immediately filed a complaint with the Advertising Standards Authority, ASA, arguing that this kind of advert breached multiple rules. It was indecent by involving sexual content, potentially appealing to or featuring young persons, and it irresponsibly promoted gambling alongside such themes. Stake quickly distanced itself from the Bonnie Blue video. The company stated that it had not directly commissioned or paid for that ad placement, implying that perhaps a third-party marketing affiliate or an automated network had inserted the logo into the video without Stake's knowledge. And indeed, Vice's reporting on the saga noted that it was unclear how exactly the Stake logo came to be on the video. Bonnie Blue herself was not an official partner of Stake. Nonetheless, from the regulator's perspective, it didn't much matter whether it was an official Stake campaign or a rogue affiliate. The brand had appeared where it clearly shouldn't have. The UK Gambling Commission swiftly launched a review of Stake's license and practices, likely already uneasy from prior incidents. Facing the prospect of heavy sanctions or outright revocation, Stake's management made a pivotal decision. They voluntarily surrendered Stake's UK gambling license and withdrew from the British market entirely. In February 2025, Stake announced it would cease all operations in Great Britain. By March 11, 2025, the site stake.uk was shut down to UK players. The Gambling Commission, in a statement, noted that Stake UK's surrender came in the context of the ongoing investigation, which meant the Commission could avoid a protracted legal process by letting the company leave on its own. British players were advised to withdraw any balances before the closure date. This was a remarkable turn of events. A company that had so proudly splashed its name across Premier League jerseys had now effectively been chased out of the UK over regulatory and advertising violations. Interestingly, Stake's departure didn't immediately end its visibility in Britain. Everton FC, whose multi-year sponsorship deal with Stake was still in effect, did not instantly terminate the contract. Since Stake still operated globally, the Everton jerseys continued to bear the Stake logo for the time being, with the club reasoning that its international audience and the agreed contract justified keeping it, even if UK fans could no longer use the product. However, the UK's stance was clear. They had no tolerance for Stake's style of operations. Moreover, the whole episode added momentum to the broader movement in the UK to ban gambling sponsors on football shirts, which the Premier League agreed to phase in by 2026. Stake's contentious run in British sports may have actually hastened that industry-wide policy shift. Australia, hometown headaches. Australia presented an ironic situation for Stake. Ed Craven and the core team ran Stake from Melbourne, Australia, and yet by law, Australians were not supposed to be able to use Stake at all. Australia has strict regulations under the Interactive Gambling Act 2001, which prohibits online casino slots, casino table games, etc., and unlicensed online gambling operators from offering services to Australians. The country does license online sports betting domestically, but online poker and casino-style gaming for real money is banned to Australian residents. Therefore, Stake's primary casino product fell squarely in the prohibited category for Australia. From early on, Stake ostensibly geo-blocked Australian IP addresses to comply with local law. Unlike the UK, where Stake tried an onshore site, in Australia they did not even attempt a locally licensed version, since online casino licenses are not available there. However, despite these formal restrictions, it's an open secret that many Australian gamblers have used or attempted to use Stake through VPNs or other workarounds. Australian authorities, particularly the Australian Communications and Media Authority, ACMA, have been fighting a game of whack-a-mole with offshore gambling sites since 2019, issuing orders to internet service providers to block hundreds of domains offering illegal gambling. If Stake wasn't already on that block list, it was certainly a candidate given its notoriety. One immediate impact of Australian law on Stake's operations became visible in sports sponsorship. In early 2023, when Stake became a title sponsor of the Alfa Romeo Formula One team, the car proudly bore the Stake branding at most races. But when the F1 circuit came to Melbourne for the Australian Grand Prix, observers noticed something different. The cars had replaced the Stake branding with Kick, the streaming platform. This was a direct result of Australia's advertising rules. Since Stake cannot legally operate or advertise in Australia, the team couldn't display Stake's name during the event. Instead, they cleverly used the sister brand Kick, which at that point had no gambling connotation, as a stand-in, thus fulfilling sponsorship obligations without breaking local law. It was a small but telling sign of how Stake's global push often ran afoul of national boundaries. In mid-2023, the ACMA went further by issuing warnings to social media influencers and streamers in Australia, reminding them that promoting illegal offshore gambling sites, implicitly targeting those who might promote Stake or similar services, could result in multi-million-dollar fines. This was around the time some Australian Twitch personalities were being courted by kick-Stake deals. The government was effectively saying, "Don't you dare advertise these companies to Australians, or you will face consequences." The pressure was mounting on Stake's Aussie home turf, even if no single dramatic enforcement, like a high-profile prosecution, had occurred yet. Meanwhile, Ed Craven, living in Melbourne, inevitably drew some scrutiny from Australian financial regulators. The movement of huge sums of money in and out of the country via crypto raises potential anti-money laundering AML questions. In general, the gambling industry is often under AML watch because casinos can be used to clean dirty money. One might deposit illicit funds, gamble a bit, and withdraw winnings as seemingly legitimate proceeds. Stake's largely anonymous, crypto-based system could be seen as ripe for such abuse. Though no public case of large-scale money laundering via Stake has been exposed, it's likely that regulators like AUSTRAC, Australia's financial intelligence agency, have been analyzing whether any Australian connections to Stake's operations might trigger oversight or reporting obligations. By 2024, Curaçao, where Stake is licensed, also announced plans to reform its lax licensing regime and implement stricter controls, partly to shed its reputation as a haven for money laundering. This means Stake's very licensure would eventually come with more strings attached regarding compliance and KYC. United States. Creative loopholes and legal challenges. The U.S. market is a complicated patchwork for gambling due to state-by-state laws. Online casino gambling, slots, roulette, etc., is only legal in a few states like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and even then only with state-issued licenses. Sports betting is more widespread legally, about 30 states allow it, but again requires proper licensing. Stake never had any U.S. license, so by default it was not allowed to accept U.S. players. To avoid outright confrontation, Stake geo-fenced U.S. residents from its main site early on. But given the lure of the huge American market, the company tried a clever end run. Stake.us, launched in August 2022, a separate platform branded similarly but structured as a social casino or sweepstakes model. Stake.us did not accept real cryptocurrency wagers. Instead, it offered free virtual credits and a sweepstakes system wherein players could technically play for free and have chances to win cash prizes. This model mimicked what other sweepstakes casinos, like Chumba Casino, had done to skirt U.S. gambling laws. By using a loophole where sweepstakes contests are legal nationwide, much like a McDonald's Monopoly game with no purchase necessary, you can have a free entry method. In practice, users on Stake.us could buy gold coins for entertainment with no direct value and get bonus stake cash, which could be used in sweepstakes games that could yield prizes redeemable for money. It's a convoluted mechanism to allow a casino-like experience under existing contest laws. Stake promoted Stake.us as its American cousin that complied with U.S. rules, emphasizing that it was 100% legal because it wasn't real gambling, at least not in the eyes of the law's definitions. Despite this facade, not everyone was convinced. By 2023, at least 2 class action lawsuits were filed in U.S. courts, one in Illinois, another in California on behalf of an Alabama resident, accusing Stake.us of effectively being an illegal gambling operation. The plaintiffs argued that Stake's sweepstakes model was a sham, that people were indeed wagering money, and that calling the currency sweepstakes entries was just semantics. They claimed losses and sought damages under state gambling loss recovery statutes. Some states allow people to sue to get back gambling losses from illegal operators. These lawsuits were a new front of legal trouble. If a court were to pierce the veil of the sweepstakes model and declare Stake.us an unlawful casino, it could cost the company dearly and shut down its U.S. ambitions. Stake, of course, contended that its model was legit and noted it had measures like free coin redemption for mailing in requests to satisfy the no purchase necessary rule. As of this history's writing, those cases were still winding through the legal system, illustrating how Stake was not free from scrutiny, even in places where it technically wasn't operating the crypto casino. Elsewhere around the globe, Stake's reach extended to many countries, and so did regulatory questions. In Europe, beyond the UK, countries like Italy, Spain, and France don't allow unlicensed foreign casinos, and many likely had citizens accessing Stake. Stake apparently began taking steps to formalize operations in some countries. By 2024, the company publicly stated it was launching regulated non-crypto versions in Portugal, Italy, and even Colombia in South America, presumably by obtaining local licenses or partnerships. This was part of a strategic pivot. Rather than remain entirely an outlaw casino, Stake was starting to embrace regulation in markets that were opening up frameworks for online gambling. The company hired legal and compliance teams and invested in stronger KYC procedures globally. This marked a maturation, a recognition that to sustain success long-term, Stake might need to shed some of its Wild West habits and play by more rules. However, the majority of Stake's revenue still came from places with less enforcement. A substantial user base was in countries like Japan, Southeast Asian nations, Canada, Brazil, and other Latin American countries, where either online gambling laws were permissive or not well enforced, and where cryptocurrency usage was high. These regions became core to Stake's business as pressure increased in the West. For example, crypto betting caught on big in Japan, where, Despite strict laws on certain gambling forms, online casinos operate in a gray area for Japanese players. Stake catered to Japanese users with local language support in games. Similarly, in Brazil, online gambling was booming in the early 2020s, and Stake was a popular platform among Brazilian bettors, even securing an official sponsorship with some Brazilian sports entities. Yet the writing on the wall was that governments worldwide were slowly but surely catching up to the Web3 gambling phenomenon. International cooperation to tackle money laundering and protect consumers was intensifying. Even Curaçao announced it would overhaul its licensing by 2024 to require licensees to establish local presence and adhere to international norms. A move likely prompted by international pressure to clean up a hub that allowed companies like Stake to flourish unchecked. In essence, Stake's gray market playground was shrinking. For Stake, these regulatory showdowns were pivotal. How do you transform from a renegade success into a respectable, long-lasting enterprise? Bijan Tirani hinted at the answer. Stake aimed to grow into a corporation that could last decades. That meant willingly entering more regulated markets, which would cut into profitability due to taxes, mandatory protections, and excluding certain high-risk customers, but would ensure the company's survival and legitimacy. By late 2024, Stake was in transition, straddling two worlds. In one, it was still the freewheeling crypto casino dominating an under-regulated online realm. In the other, it was taking cautious steps into the light of mainstream regulation, with all the compromises that entailed. The rise of Stake from a tiny Bitcoin dice game to a multi-billion-dollar gambling empire is more than just the story of one company. It's a lens on the broader transformation of online gambling in the age of cryptocurrency and social media. As we conclude this historical narrative, we reflect on Stake's current status, circa 2025, and its lasting impact on both the industry and regulatory landscape. By 2025, Stake stood as the world's largest cryptocurrency-based casino, having reportedly served over 500,000 regular users and facilitated tens of billions of dollars worth of wagers. Its financial achievements were undeniable. Annual revenues in the billions, enviable profit margins from its early unregulated days, and a brand recognition that rivals decades-old casino companies. Stake demonstrated the sheer market demand for borderless, crypto-enabled betting. It capitalized on a simple truth. People love to gamble, and if you make it frictionless and fun on a global scale, they will come. In doing so, Stake also became the template that many imitators followed. After Stake's surge, numerous other crypto casinos popped up, trying to copy its formula, some focusing on niche areas like decentralized blockchain casinos, others using similar streaming-based marketing. But none quite reached Stake's prominence, often lacking the same mix of savvy, timing, and daredevil strategy that Stake's founders employed. One of Stake's most significant impacts has been the way it blurred the lines between gambling and online entertainment. The era of the gambling streamer, which Stake turbocharged, has changed how younger generations perceive betting. Watching someone spin slots or roulette is now a form of online content akin to watching someone play video games. This integration into the fabric of digital entertainment poses new challenges. Regulators and platforms had to decide, is a gambling stream an advertisement, entertainment, or something in between? Twitch's decision to ban unlicensed gambling streams was one response, but Stake's creation of Kick showed the resilience of these gambling entertainment hybrids. The genie is out of the bottle. Future gambling platforms will likely continue leveraging content creators and influencers to attract players, taking a page from Stake's playbook. And future content platforms will have to decide what role, if any, such content has on their sites. Stake also accelerated discussions around responsible gambling in the crypto context. It brought to light how traditional protections, like deposit limits, self-exclusion databases, or advertising standards, were either absent or easily circumvented in the new frontier of crypto betting. This has nudged regulators to start modernizing their approaches. For instance, expect to see more countries updating laws to explicitly cover cryptocurrency gambling, closing loopholes that Stake once exploited. The UK's Gambling Commission, after dealing with Stake, has been exploring stricter identity verification timing, perhaps mandating upfront checks to avoid loophole periods, and discussing how to regulate the use of crypto in betting. Even the concept of digital advertising for gambling is under scrutiny. Stakes controversies have fueled arguments that there should be a global code or at least stricter cross-border rules for promoting gambling content online, given the internet's borderless nature. In financial regulation circles, Stakes' case has underscored the need for stronger AML oversight on crypto businesses. The fact that a single casino could be breached to the tune of $41 million by North Korean hackers raises alarms about how much money flows through these platforms and whether those flows are adequately monitored. Stakes' practice, revealed in interviews of converting much of its crypto revenue into traditional currency, was an interesting footnote. It suggested that even Stake understood the importance of mitigating crypto's volatility and integrating with the conventional financial system for stability. Going forward, one might see more cooperation between crypto firms and regulators on monitoring large transactions or suspicious activities, whereas previously the approach was more laissez-faire. From a cultural and social perspective, Stake has become a symbol of both innovation and excess. To its fans and many gamblers, Stake represents a thrilling new era, one where you can place a bet from anywhere at any time, where a kid fiddling with crypto in one part of the world can suddenly hit a jackpot of a lifetime, or where a punter in a country with no casinos can feel the same rush at the click of a button. For these users, Stake brought Las Vegas to their living rooms and did so with a tech-savvy vibe that felt cutting edge. The platform's success stories, like the individuals who won hundreds of thousands or even millions on a lucky spin, are part of internet lore, widely shared on forums and social media, though often without mention of the far more common stories of losses. Conversely, to its critics, Stake epitomizes the dangers of unbridled digital capitalism, a company that grew rich by exploiting legal blind spots, potentially fostering addiction, and sailing close to the wind of legality until forced to stop. They point to the near-tragic stories of youths and the vulnerable, to the communities of online gamblers who lost fortunes on Stake chasing the dopamine hits they saw their streaming idols get. For these observers, Stake is a cautionary tale of what happens when technology outpaces regulation. A tale wherein those who move fast and break things, to borrow a Silicon Valley mantra, can indeed capture market share and wealth, but often at significant societal cost. As of the mid-2020s, Stake remains operational in many parts of the world, albeit with a more cautious approach towards regulation. Ed Craven and Bijan Tehrani, now industry veterans in their late 20s, have expressed that they foresee a long-term future for Stake by working hand-in-hand with regulators where possible. The company's decision to invest in compliance and obtain licenses in various countries suggests a pivot from being an outsider to attempting to join the establishment, perhaps aiming to replicate the journey of other gambling companies that started in gray markets and later became accepted. A parallel might be how some online poker sites or sportsbook companies went legit after US law changes. Yet Stake will likely always retain a bit of its maverick spirit, as evidenced by its ongoing sponsorship deals and willingness to engage with edgy marketing, though hopefully wiser after the Bonnie Blue fiasco. The legacy of Stake will likely influence new laws, inspire new startups, and remain a talking point in debates about gambling, harm, and liberty. As a business, Stake demonstrated that there was a gigantic demand for a borderless casino, and they supplied it. As a societal phenomenon, Stake ignited discussions on how to balance innovation with protection, a theme that is echoed in many areas of tech, but is particularly acute when money and risk-taking are involved. In the end, Stake stands as both a phenomenon of its time and a catalyst for change. Its controversial rise to power compelled the world to pay attention to crypto gambling, to debate it, to regulate it, and to recognize its immense influence. Whether one views Stake as a daring innovator or as a cautionary figure, or perhaps both, one thing is clear: Stake irrevocably changed the game in online betting. Its legacy will continue to shape conversations about how we balance innovation with responsibility and how we protect individuals in an age where the casino is no longer a place, but a click away. If you enjoyed this deep dive, do me a favor. Like the video, share it with someone curious, and subscribe for more stories that dig beneath the surface. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.